sitting here at the ESG Integration Summit at Nasdaq Stockholm with Adam Kostyal, who is Head of Listings Europe at Nasdaq.
Hi.
Welcome. Hi.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, so today you are launching a pilot program for ESG reporting.
Absolutely.
Can you tell me a bit more about it?
Yeah, we launched a guide, a reporting guide, and it's not obligatory by any means for the companies to use this guide, but it's more an assistance or a help for these companies as ESG reporting has become more and more important for them to become visible in the market. So before it might have been a hygiene factor, but right now it's I think without ESG reporting in place, companies are missing an opportunity to attract investors. So we launched the guide. I think it's been well received, and now we want to find a selected few companies in each market, Nordic market that we own and represent. And we want to make sure that this guide works. So we want to find companies that are going to start using the guide, and then we can work interactively with them to make sure that this guide meets the goal that we want to set. And so that's what we're launching today.
So you call it a voluntary guide, so to say?
Yeah, it's a voluntary guide, and it's a voluntary pilot program. And it's an opportunity for us to identify companies that want to be proactive, and there's no obligation of these companies to participate. But we're looking for a number of companies that can take this guide on and start this program with us and interact with us so that we get feedback and we can give them feedback. And then at the end of the day, create something which is more resilient than maybe the initial guide was. But we feel that it's quite comprehensive and thorough, and it's aimed at helping small, medium-sized companies really start managing this, because we see that the large ones are already well up and running.
But as a small company, isn't it already rather costly to list the stock and so on? If you're planning on an IPO as a small company, and there are already so many things that you have to do to be compliant, and now also this, how should I say?
Well, I think the interesting thing is that we've had 76 companies so far this year on the Nordic exchanges, and so it shows that and most of these are small, medium-sized companies. They're not the large ones, and it just shows that there's an ecosystem here that can help smaller companies raise capital through the IPO or through a listing, and that means that at the end of the day, that ecosystem works. The advisors make some money, the companies get access to the capital markets through the exchange, and at the end of the day they find investors that see the opportunity in investing in these companies. So to say that it's too costly, I think, is a bit short-sighted, in the sense that I think if it was too costly, we would not have had 75 listings or 76 listings for smaller companies. It's always easy to list a large company because there's always advisors that want to participate in a large IPO. But the trick and the strength of our market is really that we're able to support these smaller, medium-sized markets. And what we're trying to say is that once you're on the capital markets and you're leveraging the capital markets, to add different layers of visibility and is important, because it comes at a marginal cost rather than an additional cost. And that marginal cost is an investment. And to be up to speed and up to par with regards to ESG reporting is no longer to be seen as a cost, it's an investment. Because if you don't do the ESG reporting, then you stand in a situation where you potentially lose investors or are not as attractive for investors. And that's something that you don't want to do when you're on the capital markets or listed as a listed company.
So this is actually driven by investors?
Yeah, exactly. It's not a requirement from us. It's driven by the market, and I think that's the best requirement, in the sense that it's the investors that are looking for this, and because I think our generation and the generation to come, they will value this even more, and for them sustainability is not something that is a nice to have, it's a must. And we're starting to see that more and more in the pension capital, And I think if companies are not up to speed, they will potentially lose that opportunity to attract other investors or investors that have this as a focus.
And there are already many initiatives in place, like the UN Global Compact and so on. So what can you actually add to this as an exchange?
That's what we've been asking ourselves back and forth for a very long time. And I think what we try to do is to look at all the different reporting standards that are out there and try to aggregate one set of reporting standards that we feel takes the best out of all of these. And if you fulfill this reporting guide or the requirements in the reporting guide, then you have found a really good base standard to work with. And because that's also the challenge, which standard to follow, which guide to follow, etc. So we feel that together with Evan Harvey, who's head of sustainability at NASDAQ, he spent a lot of time looking at all these different standards that are in place, and we created this guide to kind of harmonize one platform which allows companies that are not doing it today to leverage this platform and to create a standard which is reaching into all of these, or as many as possible.
But many of these, they seem really intangible, so to say. Are there really data points that can be gathered that are credible, or is this just a matter of communication, so to say?
I think there are. I think certain sectors are, well ahead of others. I mean, if you look at the real estate sector, which is a really important sector for us on the exchange, I think they are well ahead, because I think if you don't have it there, it's almost awkward. But when you look at other sectors, I think it's more difficult to find those data points. So I think that's why the pilot program is going to try to stretch itself across different sectors and to make sure that we are finding those data points and we are in a good position to understand how to support the companies, and eventually also evolve this guide to make sure that we are reflecting the right data points.
So in 1 year, when this pilot program has been carried through,
yes,
where do you hope that you will be?
In the Caribbean on a vacation. That's always the goal. But
how many companies will be ready to take the step?
Well, I think hopefully the guide that through the pilot program we've found that the guide that we have launched is well established, it's well received, and it works, and it meets the goals that we set. Hopefully we can improve it, but again, I think this dialogue between investors and the exchange is something that is already happening. So we just want to create awareness around this, and I think an interesting goal would be to see 1 year from now, going forward, how many more companies are actually up to speed on their ESG reporting. Whether they are using our guide or other standards that better meet their needs, that's up to them. But I think we want to create more awareness, and we want to make sure that they are making themselves more attractive to investors. And at the end of the day, it's not only to investors, but more attractive as companies, because this is an important factor for the sustainability overall, independent investors or not.
And what about the rest of Europe? Because this is directed to Nordic and Baltic exchanges, but what do you do? So
we own and operate the 7 exchanges here in the Nordics. So of course, we have a responsibility towards the listed companies here and to the companies that are listing with us. And in Europe, we want to make sure that as an exchange and our exchange group that we are up to speed and taking the lead. The interesting thing is, of course, the Nordics is very well far ahead in many aspects. We always rank relatively high, so we have a good ground to stand on, and we want to set a very high example. In Europe, we are actively talking in Brussels at a regular basis. We have a lobbying team there, and we want to make sure that this natural dialogue between the market and the exchange flourishes and develops, rather than enforcing rules that makes it more difficult for companies to list. So I think we want to protect this ecosystem that we have, but at the same time create awareness around this. And we see more and more European companies wanting to list here in Stockholm, and we want to make sure that these companies that are looking to list here also are meeting our standards. So that's why this guide is not only important for us, it's not only important for the companies listed with us, but also potentially, as we see an increased interest from European companies to list here, that they also meet our standards.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.